Welcome to the Board Game Snobs Podcast. Critically harsh reviews with a touch of class.
Oh man, this is weird. Hello everybody, Jerry here. This is not our 100th episode of the Board Game Snobs Podcast. This is not an episode of the Board Game Snobs Podcast. This is a self-quarantine special. We at the Board Game Snobs have decided, of course, to enact social distancing. So, I unfortunately am not at our recording studios, which is the extra bedroom at Gobby's house. Rather, I'm at the comfort of my own home, some hour away from Gobby. And I get stir crazy. So thus, I stole a microphone before I left Gobby's house at our last recording, and I've decided that perhaps maybe we will record something separately for a change, and post it, and do it maybe daily or every other day. I don't know. It just depends on how stir crazy I'm getting. Because essentially, I'm going to work, I'm coming home, it's driving me insane. You know how it is. So, let's talk about something. This is weird not having Gobby here to interrupt me or anything of that nature. I couldn't help but see that several of our listeners have requested a pod snap to finish up on The Mandalorian. We got lazy and didn't finish it. So, of course, me and Gobby are planning on doing that. But I couldn't help but notice the new news regarding Rosario Dawson being added to The Mandalorian Season 2. And apparently, she has been cast as Ahsoka Tano. Now, all you Star Wars fans out there love Ahsoka because you are probably much like my 8-year-old little girl, who, for when we introduced her to Star Wars, she wanted to watch the Star Wars Clone Wars cartoon animated series, whatever. I wasn't big on it. I, of course, reluctantly watched it with her and then became hooked, and for some reason was very disappointed that nobody told me how great that series was, and her favorite character, of course, was Ahsoka, and mine too. So, looking forward to that. I like Rosario Dawson. She's been in a lot of bad movies, though. I mean, she's a great actress, but her herself, the movies she's been in, I can't think of any good ones that I remember seeing her in. She was in Alexander, I believe, that flopped. That was a horrible movie, and yeah. So that's looking good. Maybe Season 2 of The Mandalorian will bring back my Bill Burr. That's who I'm looking forward to. Bill Burr. You know that he was in probably the weakest episode of Season 1 of Mandalorian. Spoiler alert. But I like him as a comedian. He's a funny guy. He does good in interviews. And that particular episode, well, I'll save that. Me and Gobby will get together and talk about that. But I really liked Bill Burr as a whole in those characters. And I like the episodic nature of Mandalorian. There was an overarching story, but there were just several episodes that were just like they're going on an adventure not connected with the main story. I'll be interested in seeing if Season 2 will keep that up. I kind of like that one-off little story, little Western theme to it. That was kind of interesting. But what I really enjoyed about The Mandalorian was its music, its soundtrack. I thought that was very well done. The composer of the soundtrack was a Ludwig Jorgensen. I believe from looking him up of some of his other works, he also was the composer for the soundtrack of Creed, which I haven't seen. That's the 8th Rocky movie. Creed 2, which I also haven't seen. Black Panther, which I also haven't seen. Venom, which Gobby keeps telling me I need to see. So he is a Swedish, I think I got his name right, Jorgensen. I'm trying to get better at pronouncing these names, these Swedish names. He's got the 2 dots above the O in his name. The umlauts or umlauts. I'm sorry, Sweden, for butchering your language and everybody else who has those dots above your vowels. Either way, he's a very interesting composer. I really like the soundtrack that Ludwig Jorgensen did for The Mandalorian. That must have been a daunting task. I was reading up about some of the work that he put into it. It was 4 hours of original music that he had to pen for those 8 episodes of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. 4 hours worth of music. It just seems like a daunting task. Also, you know that he must have been worried about the comparison that people were going to be making with John Williams, the famed original Star Wars composer, who made the music such an integral part of the series. I mean, nobody can imagine watching Star Wars without that epic music to it. And so I really think he did a really nice job, and I hope that he's the same composer for The Mandalorian Season 2. And if you haven't heard or just sat back and enjoyed that soundtrack of The Mandalorian, I highly recommend it. They were posting it on YouTube as the episodes were coming out, so I was just as excited to listen to the soundtrack as I was to watch the shows, and it's very nice. I like to listen to it while I'm reading. It's kind of got that nice orchestra sound to it. Anyways, keeping with the Star Wars theme, since that seems to be what I'm stuck on here apparently, and thinking about all you people who are, like myself, self-quarantining, thinking of your favorite Star Wars themed board game. Well, there's been several that we have played here recently. The one that comes to mind, of course, was Star Wars Outer Rim, which we didn't particularly enjoy. It was okay. It felt like a very generic, very lightweight pick-up and deliver game. Honestly, you can listen to our episode on it. I honestly preferred Firefly over that. And now that we've discovered Zaya, which I think Gabi's going to release our Zaya episode earlier this week, so I might not spoil that. But FYI, we really like Zaya. And so look forward to that. But yeah, the other Star Wars game that we both really enjoy and that it's frustrating to get to the table, though, is Star Wars Rebellion, which came out in 2016, a Fantasy Flight game. The only problem I had with the Star Wars Rebellion was, one, it's very awkward in the teaching of it and learning of it. There's just one particular mechanic that you kind of have to wrap your mind around. TI4 players won't have a hard time with it, but it's basically utilizing characters to activate certain sections of the boards and then moving the ships. That for some reason was hard for many people to learn. And the combat in it wasn't that great. I did find, though, that the expansion fixed the combat. So, really good, really good. And we need to get that back to the table because I highly suspect if we played Star Wars Rebellion more often, it would creep up into our top 10 because it's an excellent game. We have not, however, been playing a lot of Destiny, Star Wars Destiny. I really enjoyed playing Star Wars Destiny just because I enjoyed the collectible aspect of it and the cards and the rolling dice. It's a 2-player dice rolling kind of, for somebody who doesn't play Magic the Gathering or games of that nature, and I'm not into that living card games or deck building type games. I just don't get into them, but I found that this Star Wars theme with the dice and the artwork and how quickly it played, Star Wars Destiny we really did enjoy that, and unfortunately I believe they're discontinuing it. So I'm sure you can find a couple of those starter kits out there for real cheap. But most of you are probably, again, like myself, you're having to turn to playing either solo board games or other means to entertain yourself during these trying times. And so if you're like me, and perhaps you have a computer and you have now finally got decent internet to your home, you're finding that occasionally it's nice to do something other than just board gaming. I, at times, have often recommended various video games that I enjoy to play that are, strangely enough, they're very board game-like. And again, keeping with that Star Wars theme, I found on Steam, or SteamPowered.com, everybody knows what Steam is, they have the old Knights of the Republic Star Wars RPG game, and that is one of the best Star Wars games I've ever played. This is even recommended by Enrique, who does not like RPG video games. Hey, Enrique's doing well. He himself is also quarantined because of his high risk of, being infected. But yeah, Knights of the Old Republic, probably one of the best Star Wars RPG games. Well, no, it is the best Star Wars RPG game I've ever played. And it's got an excellent story. Yeah, like I said, it's old school. If you're looking for a neat story, I highly recommend it. That's Knights of the Old Republic. I think that's what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just daily going to get on and hook up my microphone and recommend odd things and ramble for about 10 minutes. This is a thing that I'm going to start doing until this virus thing has passed. I think this is going to be the new norm. This is very awkward, having to talk to myself. I'm used to Gabi, bald head, interjecting and saying things, or puns or something of this nature. This is odd. I have talked seamlessly for 10 minutes now. This is a new feeling for me. Well, this is it. This is it. I'm stopping this. In connection with next week, we have our episode about Zaya, and I believe another space game for which I forget. And then we have another episode that we'll be releasing where we interviewed Mr. Dan Thoreau of SpaceBiff.com. You get to look forward to that. We accidentally posted that ahead of time, so some of you may have already heard that. But then we took it down because we didn't want to post all of our episodes at once. We kind of like to drag them out. But anyways, that's next week. And then we have our 99th episode, for which we have a guest on our show. And we're not saying who the guest is. It's not like he's important or anything. It's just that y'all don't know him. But he's a fan of the show. And we thought, hey, something special. Let's have somebody else on the show that we can banter with. Because Enrique's been out sick. Bubba's working. We like to have a third wheel. And so we had a long-time listener join us on our podcast. And, yeah, he was okay. He has his own podcast. He started his own podcast about board games. It's not as good as ours, but, we figured having him on our show would be a nice way to keep him from stalking us. Anyways, so this is Jerry, and Gabi's not here, and I don't know how to stop this thing. There's a... What did I... Turn this off.